Today, we're taking an unfiltered look at the conflict between Israel and Iran. Can our self-proclaimed anti-war president deal with this new international crisis while keeping his promise to put America first? Then, in the wake of shocking political violence and international turmoil, disinformation is once again on the rise. And this time it's coming directly from the halls of the US Senate. Also, the Trump administration flip-flops on its own immigration policy. Plus, the big, beautiful bill just got uglier. Resignations rock scholarly institutions, and apparently, we're all supposed to be thankful for new flagpoles. This is Truth in the Barrel, a different kind of whiskey rebellion.
And my goodness, that was wonderful, Amy. This is going to be an exciting day. Welcome to Truth in the Barrel. But today is sort of special, right, Amy? It's Juneteenth.
Yeah.
And Amy, happy Juneteenth to everybody out there. And Amy, you know a little bit about Juneteenth, right? What can you tell me about Juneteenth?
Well, I've learned, like a lot of Americans, I've learned a lot about it in the last decade or so. I mean, this today marks the 160th anniversary of the full enforcement of the Emancipation Proclamation. So that brought an official end to slavery in the United States. And I think it's really interesting. Frederick Douglass once famously asked, "What to a slave is the 4th of July?" And if we think about that, you know, the 4th of July, we celebrated. It was our independence from Britain. But for a lot of Americans, for a lot of people that were here, they weren't free. And so this day is a celebration. It's a celebration of freedom. It was the day, June 19th was the actual day, and they make it Juneteenth. That's kind of the name of it. It was the actual day in 1865, Denver, when the Union Army made its way to Galveston, Texas. And there they announced to the people of Texas that all enslaved African Americans were free. And so I think it's important to note, though, that the Emancipation Proclamation freed African Americans in the rebelling states. But you know, the border states, Maryland was one of them, Kentucky, where I reside, was another one. They had to wait until the end of the Civil War, and they had to wait until the passage of the 13th Amendment for all of the slaves in those border states to actually be free. And so today is like the celebration of all of that finally coming about.
Hey, and so happy Juneteenth. What a great day. Day of freedom. And if everybody wants to hear more incredible history lessons like Amy McGrath just gave us, you need to subscribe. You need to download your favorite podcast. You need to subscribe on YouTube. You need to follow us on all our socials. Even if you're a Truth Social sycophant, please follow us there too. We want to piss you off. So yes, everybody needs to get on, and we need to make sure that you listened to Truth in the Barrel. That was awesome, Amy. And I guess we have a hell of a show today, do we not?
We do. And look, then I'm always going to be a history buff. My dad was a history buff. My brother's history PhD. It's like, it's in my blood.
Well, I love it. That's why we're such a great team, because you can do all the history work and I can just respond spontaneously.
Good. So before we dive into today's topics, we're excited to announce that we'll be doing our second live show this Tuesday, June 24th, 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, right?
Yeah, and I love it because that means at 4:30 p.m. when everybody's driving home in California, they can listen to us, 5:30 Mountain Time. Right. This is going to be awesome. 6:30 Central Time. I mean, it's just a perfect time to go live and to listen to us. And I hope everybody does.
Yeah. And if you weren't able to join us for the first live show, don't worry. The video's still up, right, on YouTube, and the audio's in your podcast feed. So you can go back and listen. The first show was a lot of fun. So
it was a banger. It was a banger. I loved it. I just got a good feeling about today's show, though, Amy. I think with all the things happening in the world, I think we have this opportunity to do some good stuff today.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's get started. Denver, stop me if you've heard this one before, but President Trump publicly contradicts and undermines the findings of U.S. intelligence agencies. No, this is not July of 2018, and we're not in Helsinki. It's June 17th, 2025. We're aboard Air Force One. He's referencing the National Intelligence Director, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard's testimony that the intelligence agencies of the United States of America assess that Iran is not currently building a nuclear weapon. Donald Trump said, quote, "I don't care what she said. I think they're very close to having one." Okay,
It's
here we go.
listen, me and you have no confidence in Tulsi Gabbard. None. She's a
But I
conspiracy
do have
theorist.
confidence in the intelligence community.
Well, that's what I'm going to. She's incompetent. She's awful. He says, I don't care what Tulsi Gabbard says. That makes me smile a little bit. The issue is if the intelligence community, if the professionals are assessing that, I would think that the U.S. president would hold some kind of credence towards that, right? That maybe we should actually think that maybe Iran, maybe they don't have a nuclear weapon. However, I think that he's listening to other individuals that maybe don't have that type of expertise. I wonder, and the thing is, sometimes we like to try to guess some things, but I wonder if he's talking to Israel, if he's taking their lead a little bit, especially what you see happening right now with Bibi not being able to complete the task in Iran and asking for U.S. intervention. So I'm wondering if that was a buildup to that, because right now it seems like, as Trump said before, that he didn't trust the U.S. intelligence agencies before. It seems like he's going down that same path, which is why I'm glad you referenced that. But it's just incredible to me.
Yeah, and because we're going to talk a lot about Iran, but and what's going on, I'm curious as your thoughts. Like when the president of the United States, Denver, just sort of dismisses the intelligence community. You came from the intelligence community. How does that like go over?
It doesn't. It's a gut punch. And what happens is like, what am I doing here? Right?
Yeah.
It's a destruction of morale, but it also starts to lead to this. Do we say what the president wants to hear, and it takes away that independent analysis of the experts of that specific region? And that's also a slippery slope. And that could be a whole nother show, Amy, about when you have a president who has these tendencies where the professionals believe that what they're doing doesn't make sense or it doesn't make a difference. And at that point, are they just wanting to be promoted, or do they just want to say what the president wants to hear that's against the national interest and only with the president's personal interest? And I think that's the effect that it has on the intelligence community.
Yeah, it's very scary. And go back to the run up to the Iraq War, the picking out the intelligence that the leaders want to hear. But it's not just
right.
Tulsi. It's not just that Tulsi, that Trump is getting sideways with her. It's the list of prominent mega supporters, right, that have become critics of this Iranian possible war with Iran. Includes Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, Marjorie Taylor Greene. So we've got this push pull within MAGA world about this big issue of the Iran war, right?
It's going to be really difficult for him, right, to say that he's the anti-war president. I mean, me and you were just talking about the Houthis not too long ago. I mean, we were just talking about sort of unilateral strikes, him sort of going against whatever the intelligence community says, which is what he does. But it's funny, too, about MAGA, the Ted Cruz, Tucker Carlson interview that went viral, where Tucker was literally against Iran, but also seemed to come across as a complete anti-Semite. But it's funny that you have this rift in the MAGA world, and it wasn't too long ago. I just got to send a video this morning of Tucker Carlson just a few years ago calling for the annihilation of Iran. Pretty exciting, right? It is so hypocritical. But yeah, I mean, I think MAGA is in a tizzy. I mean, even Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon going against Trump. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting that this is happening right now. But I wonder if we still are going to go finish business and Israel's going to drag us into this war. And me and you have some incredible opinions, I think, on this. But I do wonder if despite intelligence, despite our best efforts at a professional analysis of the situation, if Trump will still go in based on Israel's assertion that Iran is close to a nuclear weapon. And again, that is something that does bother me, even though, as you know, I am no lover of Iran, and we're going to talk about that, but it does bother me that we might be forced into this situation because of a president who doesn't listen to our intelligence agencies.
Yeah, I mean, I know we started out this segment talking about, Tulsi Gabbard and talking about some of the mega people, but honestly, they are not the American people, okay? And most of the American people, do not want another war in the Middle East. So let's take a step back, and you hit the nail on the head. And this is one of my big concerns, is that the president then orders us to help the Israelis bomb, or outright goes and has the United States military start bombing Iran with no war declaration from Congress, with no authorization to use military force from Congress, no debate within Congress. We have gone from a nation whose constitution says, Article 1 says that Congress is the one that declares war. We've already come to an age where, gosh, we bombed the Houthis without any authorization to use military force, without any war declaration. The only people that debated it were J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth over Signal. And this is a problem, right? I mean, we're about ready to go into a major war here when the American people have no say. And the way in our system the American people have a say is through Congress. And that's why the founders designed it that way.
I'm torn. The AUMF, right? When you're talking about all of the, functions of military force, commander in chief is the United States president. When you're talking about all the ramifications of state-sponsored terrorism, when you're talking about all the things that we have to maneuver with and go quickly, part of the AUMF in 2001 was in response to 9/11. When you're authorizing military force and you can sort of circumvent Congress based on a specific terrorist activity that has to do with a specific function of that activity, and we strike without going through Congress, which is sort of an abdication of congressional powers, but saying that we have to move quickly in this new world of terrorism. The problem that you have here, right, is that why are we striking Iran? Is it state-sponsored terrorism? Is it support of Shia militia groups? Is it what they're doing, right, with the Houthis? What is it their support of war against Israel with Hezbollah and Hamas? Is that terrorism? Maybe that fits the pattern of AUMF or allocation of force proclamation based on terrorist activities. We're not talking about that. We're talking about going after Iran because of nuclear facilities, preemptive strike on nuclear facilities that squarely lies in congressional authorities. And if I'm in Congress sitting right now, even though we had the debates on the AUMF and when I was in there, I would say, listen, Congress has to be looking at the intelligence and the appropriation of funds and declaration of war based on the fact that if we do go into Iran, this is not a quick thing. This could be protracted. So listen, do I want to make the IRGC into a parking lot? Yes. And my background on this, running the counter IED cell between
So what's the
Iraq.
IR? Explain what that is again to
Iranian
everybody.
Republican Guard. So you're talking about the absolute, military authority in Iran, but also the Bubbas, right? When you're talking about the flow down that supports state-sponsored terrorism globally. It's this thing in me, right? Knowing that American troops have died because of Iranian resupply for IEDs and other activities that I'm absolutely 100% sure of because I was there in the counter IED or in the COIC, the counter IED operations integration cell. There's this weird thing with me, Amy, and I know that me and you love having these conversations. Yes, there's a part of me who believes that Iran needs to be hit military, especially in nuclear sites, but also in sites that are related to state-sponsored terrorism. The issue that I have, that's personal, that's something I think that is good globally, but the issue that I have is the proper process and the vetting of such military strikes through Congress, and to ensure that the U.S. is acting in their own best interest, not in another country's interest, based on the fact that they got into a conflict they don't think they can finish and have asked for our help, outside of us maybe coordinating those specific actions. So those are the things I think that's why you debate. That's why you have a Congress. That's why you have our system of checks and balances when it comes to these type of activities.
That's right. I mean, getting into war is no small thing. And the founders, I think, got this right. We need to have a debate about this stuff. I'm with you. If it's super time sensitive, there's no question the president needs to act. And in an age of nuclear weapons, we have to understand that. But this is not, in my belief, time sensitive. And I think that we need to have a debate about this. Here's what I'm worried about with the U.S. getting involved in this latest war. Okay, Iran, I think, there's a good possibility that they now race to get a bomb. And there's three things that you need to get a bomb, right? There's material, which they may already have, thanks to the 7 years of no inspectors that were able to go into Iran because Trump pulled out of the Iran deal. Okay. So they may already have that material, but they also need the knowledge to build the weapon and a delivery mechanism. And they may already have that. If they already have that material, it could be rapid development. I worry about retaliation too. Retaliation asymmetrically against the United States, our allies around the world, soft targets around the world, Iran just unleashing their sort of proxies against us. And I just, this is yet another Middle Eastern war that we're involved in. And I'm worried about this. I don't think it's a good idea.
You brought up something there that I was talking about with somebody beforehand, is that we've been so depleted on our domestic terrorism side, right? When you're looking at DHS, when you're looking at the incompetence in our counterterrorism posture, I'm a little bit worried, right, on asymmetric warfare, right? What is terrorism going to look like if we do go against Iran? Very worried. I mean, that's something that me and you both hold dear, right? That's a worry.
Yeah.
And do we even have the resources or the professionalism to guard against something like that? And so break on that. That is a real issue, right, that I would certainly want to debate. With all the sober thinking of me, yes, I want to bomb the hell out of Iran. Yes, the hawk in me, what Iran has done, the fact that I know so much about what they've done globally. I've been to Israel. I've seen that bad stuff happen. You're in the kibbutz on the Syrian border, looking at flags of Hezbollah flying right in Lebanon, right over the border. We knew the estimates of missiles that were there, and there's just a part of you is like, this is a bad actor state supporting multiple functions in terrorism globally. Let's go get them. Let's go get them right now. Let's take them out. Bam. Let's do it. And then I go back and forth, Amy, right? So then I'm like, man, do we really want to do this again? We saw how long Afghanistan was. We saw what happened in Iraq, right? Let's, notwithstanding Desert 1, right? If we go into Desert 2 and then this whole long drawn out, Afghanistan and Iraqi conflict, us actually, part of regime change, and we sort of did it. So you have all these things that are going through my head as somebody who has all this experience. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not 35 anymore, Amy, right? Or I'm like, that bad bomb, bad kill, right? That can't be what the United States foreign policy is about. Foreign policy has to look at the cascading effect. And the difference is, if I'm in a position of service, it's more important to look at what happens to the American people long term than specific military action as a quid pro quo or revenge for specific acts that Iran might have done in the past. And I am absolutely torn between my objectives, right? What I think should happen to Iran based on my knowledge, but what is the long-term effect to the United States if we don't have proper debate or we're discounting our intelligence services?
That's right.
That's my back and forth in my own head every day.
I go with the latter. I do, because I feel like, so first of all, you and I fought in this, war on terrorism, this 20-year deal. What have we learned from that? Yes, we've also learned that if you do it incorrectly, you create more terrorists. Sure. So, this idea of just, going out and bombing Iran, I don't know. I think there is a better way of doing this, particularly when the reason stated to the world is the nuclear capability and not the terrorist capability. I do believe that Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism. They absolutely are. And that's why we've done things like sanctions. And that's why but starting a war over that, I'm not convinced. And here's the thing. You want to bomb Iran? All right. Have Congress vote on that. Take that big, beautiful bill back that they're all debating. We don't need to touch that right now. This is more important. Let's bring a bill to the fore. Let's do an authorization to use military force right now. Let's see if the American people want to authorize this. That's the American way, in my belief, because it's not an imminent threat to us. That's just what I believe. And here's the last thing I'll throw out as a fact. Trump was holding talks. His team was holding talks with Iran when Israel decided, we don't care about what the U.S. is doing. Let's go blow them up. Seriously, if Israel did that, Denver, if Biden was president or Obama was president, we wouldn't think that those presidents were very strong. Now, would we? How weak is Donald Trump right now for just Israel just turning around and saying, we don't really care what he thinks?
So, Amy, you said some things there that I'm going to state what I think my opinion or analysis is of Congress if they were to vote on it today, right? On actions against Iran, I think it would fail. I think there's enough Republicans and Democrats right now who would vote against force. And I think the Republicans are the ones who would push it over where force would not be authorized through Congress. And I know people are like, oh, God, Demery, don't you think everybody would be in lockstep with Trump? I think that's difficult because you said something else, right? You said, hey, what is the respect factor for foreign, leaders right now for Trump? I think it's pretty low. I think that he acts recklessly, but I also think it's not only that the respect is low. I want to throw this out there. Maybe they think that based on his ego or the way that he does decision making, that they can force him into a course of action that could be what they want, regardless of how it affects America. And so if Bibi's like, hey, if we attack, I can just pull Trump into it. Boy, talk about a lack of respect that you believe that you can manipulate POTUS in a way to help you do something that doesn't have the backing of our own intelligence community. And break again, the military break. You said something else too, that we know that in this war on terror, we could create more terrorists, right? This hatred against the United States. I would humbly submit that if we do it correctly, we kill more terrorists too. So if I'm in Congress right now and I'm looking at Iran, if they're severely weakened, there's another issue that I don't think has been brought up, and that is how Iran and Russia's complicity in what's happening in Ukraine, drone production, things of that nature. So then you start wondering, okay, hold on a second. Would I authorize force if I'm somebody who's a Ukraine supporter, looking at the geopolitical realities of Russia's weakness and the fact that Russia isn't retaliating, it seems, right? What's happening with Iran, I guess Putin nominally called for peace the other day. It's this geopolitical morass that's happening right now based on the fact that we have a president that's not making decisions based on policy or intelligence analysis or the long-term effects to America. It's a spontaneous reaction with somebody who has been down toward the pro-Putin line. And my question, Amy, is why hasn't he struck Iran yet? It's if you're looking at all this that's happening, why hasn't he done this? If is it because he's pro-Putin? Is he worried about the sanction issues with Russia and Iran? And so now I'm thinking, well, strike them. Let's do a surgical strike on those nuclear facilities, but let's also look at the drone manufacturing plants. Now I'm thinking, okay, is that even part of our warrant? So those are the things that I go back and forth with, right? Is that Iran is such a bad actor. We don't need to talk about them having nuclear facilities or the ability to build the bomb to strike them. The flip to that, if we're looking at Ukraine and Russia, is this the time for the U.S. to start to decapitate the alliances that we're looking at between some of these foreign actors? But is that even in our warrant? Is that something we should even be looking at? And I don't. And so these are and you're like, God, it's this overall morass that Iran presents, I think, with the bizarre alliances happening with them, Russia and China. But also we have a president reacting to a country that shouldn't be able to force us into a course of action unless we think through all this first.
Yeah. So I hear you, Denver. And I've absorbed all of what you just said. However, I do not believe this president can think with that complexity. Okay. And I don't think that he has surrounded himself with people in the national security space that can connect those dots for themselves, let alone for him. So where are these decisions coming from? I think that they're coming from his rear end. Okay, I really do. I think Donald Trump is completely out there. He apparently there's a Washington Post article out there that says he's not listening to Pete Hegseth. Okay, great. That's probably fine. He's not listening to Tulsi Gabbard. Okay, that's probably fine. But that it basically says that he's listening to no one. Marco Rubio has like 10 jobs, and he's apparently completely subservient to Trump. Never says anything, against what Donald Trump is thinking or feeling. And so it's really just the Donald Trump world. And that is very, very scary. I think about the fact that Donald Trump tweeted out like a day or two ago, quote, unconditional surrender. Like anybody that knows anything about Iran knows that is just ludicrous. This is a country that is twice the size of Iraq. It is bigger in terms of population than Iraq and Afghanistan combined. It is mountainous. It's got deserts, and it has the sea. It's very well protected. Lots of people. We're not going to invade with boots on the ground. So where's this total surrender coming? Unless he's talking about, well, I guess total surrender means a deal in which Iran would give some concessions for their nuclear power. I mean, Donald Trump is so far out there that everything that he says or does is just like nobody knows.
And I apologize, on the complexity thing. That's me if I were POTUS or in Congress right now. What's what I would be thinking about, Amy. I've been in the back rooms with Donald Trump, and I tell you, there is no nuance. You're exactly correct. You've nailed it. He's in his own head. He thinks somehow his narcissism combines with ignorance to create an arrogance of decision making. That's who he is. Before you know it, Rubio is going to be running the White House tours. Please come this way. I'm also the Secretary of State, but would you like to see the room here? That's very
he's
nice.
Also in charge of the National Archives, so he's got the job too. He's got it.
Hi, here in the National Archives, we have 17 billion pieces of data. But I think
what school are you guys from? What fifth grade school?
Oh, Johnson Elementary School in Tennessee. That's very nice. Yeah, I haven't been there. So it's just incredible. But yeah, I think that the Iranian thing is, as we're rolling through here, Amy, I want to hurt them. I want to hurt them bad. But gosh dang it, we have to have real people making decisions, looking long term at what that cascading effect looks like. And there's also another big sponsor of state terrorism called Russia. And we do not know what that effect is. And if we don't, we better have real decision makers, real competent people making these decisions. And right now we don't.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
And I think it's also important, Denver, to make the distinction between the Iranian people and the Iranian regime, because the people themselves are also torn. A lot of people don't like the regime, just like we don't like the regime. So it's very complex. But I'm with you. I'm torn about it myself. But I think that the American people through the Constitution, need to vote on something if we're going to start a war. As somebody who's fought in wars that lasted a very long time, I think it's imperative that we go back to the founding document of our country. And if we're going to go to war, okay, have the people vote on it. As much as I hate to say this, and even though we're moving on to our next topic, we're going to unfortunately have to talk about Tucker Carlson, which I can't even believe that we decided on this segment, but here we are. Tucker Carlson faced off against Ted Cruz over the topic we just talked about, Iran. Tucker tried to humiliate Cruz by asking him what the population of Iran is, and Cruz asked Tucker if he believes we landed on the moon. All this stuff, it's a big kerfluffle in the media right now. But my first question to you, Denver, is why do we even care what Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz say?
We shouldn't. I watched this thing, Amy. Right at the beginning, Tucker Carlson says, well, the United States is trying to kill Maduro. We all know this. as soon as somebody makes an assertion that we're trying to assassinate a head of state, like in Venezuela, I'm going to take that person to the carpet. Where did you get that information? Everybody knows that. Only crazy people would say that. What's your sourcing? Come on, Tucker.
Yeah.
Everybody knows we're trying to kill Maduro, because you can't allow insanity. You can't have a baseline assertion based on insanity and conspiracy theories to start a debate. The other thing too, I said that we have sort of the slippery eel, right, against the wannabe incel conspiracy theorist. That is the debate that you had between Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson. So, and then mainstream media is reporting on this, Amy. What you said about why should we care? We shouldn't. There's no reason to care. Ted Cruz is one of 100 senators, one of 535 members in the House. He's pretty much lost a lot of the real momentum that he had as somebody who was close to Trump. Tucker Carlson is an outcast from Fox that is, sports fringe theories, thinks that testicle tanning is a thing, right? And says that demons attacked him and scratched him. You can't argue with people like that. And if you sit in the chair, you have to make sure that you're coming over the top and you're punching and demanding sourcing every single second and forcing them into the abyss of their own insanity. Nobody should care. And when you're talking about Iran or you're talking about anti-Semitism, which Tucker was absolutely on the anti-Semitic line, that's where he likes to live. As a guy who's a friend of Orban, somebody who's been to Russia, somebody who's bragged about Russia, who's a pro-Russia individual, no matter how you slice it. I don't think you care at all. Then you have Ted Cruz, who doesn't even care if his wife is slandered by somebody and who seems to flip-flop with any way the political windsock blows. So I don't think anybody should care, but obviously the mainstream press needs content and people want to talk about it.
Well, I'm going to take a little bit of a different view. Ted Cruz is a sitting U.S. senator, and call me small c conservative, but I think that there is this notion that if you serve in government at that capacity, at that such a high level, you are one of the leaders of our country, and people listen to you. And Tucker Carlson, put him aside. He's a crazy loon. I got that. But Ted Cruz, he when you ask for, well, what's your source, a U.S. senator can always go back and say, well, that's classified. And the American people don't know any better. And they look at somebody like Ted Cruz and they say, well, he's in a position to know, and he's saying these things. And this is why what Ted Cruz said the other day, I found completely irresponsible. And I put out this statement on social media, because what Cruz said is he was talking about Iran. And he basically said, well, if Iran gets the bomb, we're going to see a mushroom cloud over New York City and Los Angeles. And that is, in my belief, completely irresponsible. You are scaring people. The Iranians can, even if they got a bomb, they cannot. Their missiles cannot reach the United States of America. And even if they got a bomb, there's no, nothing there that says that they can't be deterred, just like North Korea's deterred, just like Pakistan's deterred from using a weapon in an offensive way. So, to me, I think the Ted Cruz piece of him going down conspiracy theories and lying to the American people is a bigger deal than Tucker Carlson doing it. And so that leads me into this belief that when we talk about just this past weekend of the terrible political assassinations that occurred in Minnesota, you had a sitting U.S. Senator, Mike Lee, spreading a conspiracy theory about these political assassinations, basically suggesting that the violence was caused by the far left, was caused by this guy, this domestic terrorist being a Marxist. And that, of course, spread, right? And so this is U.S. senators starting this stuff.
Yeah, I had friends of mine calling me about that. So the reason I had to pour a drink, what I'm about to say here is just based on, listen, a serious sitting United States senator would never sit with Tucker Carlson. That would be like the Food Channel sitting with Jeffrey Dahmer to talk about culinary choices, right? That it's that ridiculous. It's that ludicrous when you in the grand scheme of things. I will humbly submit, and I don't want to. And it's not just argument for argument's sake. That Tucker
Mhm.
Carlson has a tremendous, maybe more than Ted Cruz, in the manipulation of MAGA opinion, and maybe one of the reasons why Trump hasn't actually gone off and authorized any bombing of Iran yet. And when you're looking at Cruz and how irresponsible he is, and that's what, the slimy eel that he is, the political windsock that he is, even though he went out and started to attack Tucker, he has to be very careful that he doesn't cross that dividing line. Even though the Trump came out against Tucker, there's a real problem here because Tucker controls over 4 million YouTube subscribers.
Mhm.
Not quite as much as we have, by the way, but almost,
We're getting there.
So we're getting there. So, and that's why I needed a drink, because what I want to say here is I think it's the other way around with MAGA, which has been the problem, is where you have influencers, whether it's
Mhm.
Tucker or Steve Bannon or Matt Walsh, go down the line, right, that seem to be able to drive whatever MAGA is doing. And if you remember, even Elon threatening that if people didn't go his way, he was going to primary them. There's so much power in the money and influence sector of the MAGA media and the
Mhm.
alternative media that's happening right now. So
Yeah.
when you're talking about going even on the Tucker Carlson, I would say, train, you have completely demeaned what it means to be a U.S. senator. And then you start talking about Mike Lee. And this is the thing that just the Mike Lee conspiracy theory tweet came from the bowels of the 4chan, Twitter, far right MAGA conspiracy theory ecosystem. It is a downstream effect. It's the same thing that happened when Trump in 2020 was tweeting that Obama had killed SEAL Team 6 with Joe Biden. And that came up to the subpoena Obama hashtag, which was retweeted by Lindsey Graham.
Mm.
And so when I see this, my mind starts to go, here we go again, right?
Yeah.
Where you have senators that are appealing to this base conspiratorial fantasy thinking that's leading towards policymaking. And the fact that Mike Lee would do that, to me, leads me to believe that it's not getting any better. It's getting worse, especially as we head into the 2026 midterms. So that's why I had to have a drink.
Yeah.
Before I got into this, is I'm seeing this upstream, downstream conspiracy theory effect that's leading into policy decisions and then leading all the way up to the White House again. And I think that Tucker's going to have a lot of influence on these decisions. And right now, if I was a betting man, I think it's 51-49 that Trump does not bomb Iran.
Well,
And if
but
I'm wrong, we can go back and say, God, Dan, you should have went the other way. But that's where I'm at.
yeah, but going back to this this Minnesota heinous shooting and the U.S. Senator Mike Lee from Utah, he put out 3 different posts, Denver,
Yeah.
that misidentified the shooter as a disgruntled Marxist.
Yes.
He tried to pin the blame of the violence on the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, and nothing that Mike Lee said was factual. None of it. But the online right people ate it up, and it wasn't just like the online right people in their parents' basements. The president's son, Don Jr., is sending out the same messages. Senator
Yes.
Bernie Moreno of Ohio, just north of me, sending out these messages. Elon Musk, who has millions of followers. Laura Loomer. This guy named Benny Johnson, who's a right-wing influencer with millions of followers, is sending out this stuff. I'm just telling you, if you have somebody in your family who's following like Benny Johnson, tell them that these guys they're conspiracy theorists. What they are saying is wrong. It's false. And now we have U.S. senators doing it. And that's the concern I have, is that it is ratcheted up. It's becoming, this disinformation is becoming normalized now. It's not the fringe anymore. The good news is Mike Lee was confronted by a fellow U.S. senator in the Capitol building. U.S. Senator Tina Smith from Minnesota. She knew the woman who was shot, and her husband, the woman who was shot, was the Speaker of the Minnesota House. And Tina Smith knew her personally. And she walked right up to Mike Lee And I don't know what she said. We don't really know. We have a picture of her confronting him. And, it wasn't long after her confrontation that Mike Lee took those social media posts down. So I have to say, cheers to Tina Smith for having the guts.
Cheers to Tina Smith. We're doing an early cheers. I like that.
Yeah, to talk to the jerk in person.
Well, listen, she has more balls than everybody else in Congress, doesn't she, Amy? And
yeah,
that's the truth of it. And I just think when you talked about Benny Johnson and those guys, Mike Lee it's a conspiracy theory circle jerk, right? And it feeds off each other. And Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, you talk about these individuals with Marjorie Taylor Greene, obviously. All these individuals are part of that ecosystem where it's the influencer, elected official conflagration, right? They start this fire of conspiracy theory. But guess what? It's okay though, Amy, because Mike Lee said it was sarcastic. So I don't know why are we having this? He just said it was sort of a joke, right? It was just sarcasm.
It's not a joke. It's not a joke. And here, I'm going to throw some facts in here because we're truth in the barrel and I'm all about facts. Okay. And this might rub you a little bit the wrong way, but you might think I'm a partisan, right? Right.
Facts don't rub me the wrong way. The only thing that I chafe on is when I'm running a lot with shorts and hot weather.
Well,
so bring the facts.
There's a study published just recently in the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. And it shows that the community notes on X is a big platform, right? It used to be called Twitter, and they have community notes that kind of correct false statements. Okay. The community notes on X flags Republican lawmakers' posts as misleading 2.3 times more than Democratic ones. So all of this, both sidesism of both sides lie. Okay. I'm just saying those are the facts. 2.3 times
globalists.
more.
It's slanted.
Right. Disinformation is so pernicious and it spreads far too easily that it's impossible to find an issue that hasn't yet been infected by it. So while it's not a contest, a strong case can be made that says that the issue most negatively impacted by disinformation, Denver, is immigration. And that's our topic next.
Well, I don't agree. And as you know, I am only facts-based, and that is why I'm no longer a Republican.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, in today's day and age, it's really hard to be a Republican and be facts-based.
It'd be difficult. If you like science and you like shots and vaccines and you don't want leprosy.
Yeah.
Probably won't.
Yeah. So I think it's important, though, to talk about this immigration issue because there's a lot of disinformation out there, particularly when it comes to the protests in Los Angeles. Now, last week, we spent a lot of time on the protests themselves. We spent a lot of time talking about the Trump's deployment of the National Guard and the military and why that might not be so good. But I wanted to take it back today and talk to you about why these protests are happening in the first place. And it has to do with Trump's signature issue of immigration. And it has specifically to do with his tactics going after blue states, blue cities, having his federal agencies and federal agents put masks on and raiding businesses and farms and Home Depots to take out stock clerks and busboys at restaurants. And what are we doing here? And many people have risen up and said, look, the tactics here are wrong, right? I mean, that's what these protests are really about.
Well, I mean, I think it's the unnecessary use of violence. I think it's public officials being arrested. I think it's the fact that if he did these raids in an agricultural district like Virginia 5, he would absolutely lose favor with big donors, especially agricultural producers. If he didn't have legal and illegal immigrant laborers in Virginia, our actual agricultural industry would collapse. How do I know? Because I was the congressman in the 5th district, which is 65% rural. You had one of the fruit pickers there, one of the fruit producers, and I'm not going to say which because people would know, went to that individual and he gave me a quiz. Amy, would you like to hear the quiz? You ready for the quiz?
Yeah.
He had 135 workers on the farm. So I go in and I said, hey, and I'll call him Ricky. So Ricky's an older guy. I don't know if that name is completely, but Ricky. I said, hey, Ricky. I said, what's your issues? What problems are you having right now with immigration? He goes, Denver, I want to ask you a question. Congressman, I want you to guess the percentage of workers here that are American citizens and not immigrant labor. Okay. I said, 70%. 70% is immigrant labor. He's like, no, higher. I said, no. He goes, yeah. I said, 80%? He goes, higher.
Higher.
I said, 90%? Guess what he said, Amy?
Higher.
Higher. I said, 95%? Guess what he said, Amy?
Higher.
Higher. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. So I asked him, I said, well, what about these white boys? I mean, don't they work? So now I'm in Virginia, right? He goes, Denver, he goes, I can't get a white boy or a black boy to work at all. He said, the only thing I get is immigrant labor, because after 2 weeks, all them boys, they actually file for workers' comp, or they say the work's too hard, or they don't want to work up a sweat. I said, so are you telling me that American labor is hard to find? He goes, it's almost impossible. So here's what I want to ask you, Amy, when you're talking about immigration enforcement and why people are up in arms. Do you know who the last president was to make sure that immigrants had amnesty, illegal immigrants? Did you know who that is?
I guess Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, 1986. That is now. So is that the Republican way? So I guess what I'm telling you is I think people are correct in saying that we can have a strong immigration policy, but if you're not making sure that policy is equally applied, and you're using unnecessary violence, and you're going after public officials, and you're gaslighting them, because we've seen the videos, Amy. These people are not assaulting ICE officers. It's ludicrous, right? I guess all of that is why people are on the streets, because the law is not equally applied. There's unnecessary violence, and it seems to me that it's arbitrary in who they decide to arrest as far as public officials, and it seems that they're above the law. And I think all of that has created this atmosphere.
Yeah, and we have to be real. I mean, you brought up Reagan. The last time we had any comprehensive immigration, legislation in this country was like 1986. So we've had a broken system for decades, and these people are here. Many of them have been here for decades. And you can fault them for coming, 20 years ago, or maybe you fault their parents. But the idea that we would raid businesses where these people are living normal law-abiding lives and trying to deport them without due process, throwing them into foreign prisons. That's what these protesters are protesting. That's what American citizens are saying. This is too much. It is wrong. Look, we all believe, I think that most Americans believe that if you are here illegally and you are committing crimes, like violent crimes, okay, you should be given a hearing. You should be given the normal justice system, and you should be deported. Like, there's not a whole lot of controversy about that. But that's not what they're doing. They're trying to get a number to raise the numbers of total deportations, because Stephen Miller wants a certain number, and they're raiding businesses and people's homes. So many American citizens are married to or have family members who may be undocumented. And we're just, it's wrong. The way forward here, Denver, is to have some comprehensive immigration reform that secures our borders and somehow looks at the people that are here today and says, okay, we need to get a path to citizenship. What's done is done. It's done in the past. The people that were in charge were Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush and all of these people before our time. It's done. They're here. Okay. And we need to figure out a way forward for these folks, right?
Why not? It's been done before.
Because they're here working already. They're in Virginia. They're in Kentucky. They're in
Come on, Amy.
California.
Amy, I've been told by Republicans, so let's just cut to the chase here, that all these illegals were let in by Biden and Obama. They didn't do anything. Open borders. They just let them all in. So, isn't it up to the Republicans to fix all these illegals? That Obama and Biden didn't do anything, right? They didn't deport anybody, right? That's what I've heard.
Denver, the facts are this. The Obama administration deported over 3.16 million people, and Biden deported 4.44 million. So not once did either Biden or Obama need troops in the streets to do that, by the way. And Denver, do you know how many people Trump deported in his first term?
I do not.
1.7 million.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Wait a second, Amy. You telling me Obama and Biden deported more people than Trump in his first term?
Yeah, by a lot.
By a lot.
But guess what? They did it the right way. They did it legally. They didn't throw away due process. They abided by the Constitution. I mean, some basic stuff. That is what people are protesting right now.
Well, I'll tell you this. So if it's a 1.7 million, what I'm going to do after the show is I want to look how many Trump has deported up till now. And it'd be pretty interesting because if I remember back in the day, what was it, like 7.5 million between Obama and Biden? You're talking about 1.7 million in Trump's first term. Clinton was over 12 million.
Really?
12 million. So, yeah. So that's why it's pretty interesting to me that when I have Republicans come to me, and I know I was sort of playing around about the Republicans telling me that there was open borders. And that's why, because we sort of know some of the stats, it's just pretty interesting to me that there's so many Republicans and so many of my friends that say, hey, Denver, this is the right thing to do because Obama and Biden didn't do anything. Well, obviously they did a lot more than Trump did in his first term. And I wonder if Trump will even deport as many as Joe Biden or Obama coming up. And he probably won't match Clinton's numbers of over 12 million. So it's interesting to me. Again, it's this disinformation bloom we've already talked about earlier in the show, right, Amy? Or this ignorance, about what's really happening in the world.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. Well, so now Denver, I don't know about you, but I think we've earned a break for ourselves.
I think we have
do you by any chance have some whiskey handy? I know you've been drinking it already, but tell us about it.
Well, this is truth in the barrel, right? We have to live up to our namesake here. Mm-hmm. So I have the Glen Turret. Now, this is a Highland whiskey, right? Actually, the distillery is just a few miles outside of Perthshire in Scotland. But there's a reason. I had to blow the dust off of this for you. Like I went deep into the cabinets. This was a 16-year special distiller edition. But Glen Turret, what's special about this Highland Scotch? They claim to be the oldest distillery in Scotland.
Nice.
In Scotland. So you're talking about a 1775.
And what is it called again?
It is Glen Turret. GlenTurret.
Okay.
It is not peated. And I know people are like, oh my God, a Scotch that's not peated. Well, most of them aren't.
Glen Turret.
Yeah, Glen Turret, like a gun turret. So, and it is delicious. It is just silky smooth. As you know, it's all barley. Oh my. It's like cherries and alcohol. That's about where my palate is. But it's delicious. It's delicious.
Cherries and alcohol.
Pretty much.
well,
cherries and warmth. Pretty much.
Nice stuff. Well, I have just so you know, and I'll just throw it out there. I'm drinking the Nearest Green Tennessee whiskey, and in honor of Juneteenth. And if you don't know about Nearest Green, go ahead and Google that and look that up. I'm not going to go into it here, but it is a really cool story. So, but do you think, Denver, that the Glen Turret brand would pair well with some quick shots?
I think it pairs very well with quick shots, spam, and that's why I actually selected it.
Excellent. Let's get into them.
All right. So I'm going to bring up my quick shot paper.
Let's do it.
Did you like that? And I still have whiskey in the glass. So I want to thanks to the GOP majority in the Senate, Trump's big, beautiful bill just got considerably uglier. Even though Medicaid, think about this. I'm in a rural district, right? It's viewed favorably by 83% of the public. the Senate GOP decided it was a good idea to propose cutting it by $800 billion, Amy.
It's crazy.
Well,
And
that's
I'm
a lot
just
of
going to
people without
say,
health care.
I'm just going to say that figure of 83%, that's up from the last couple months. It used to be 77%, and it's up. The figure of people liking Medicaid is up. Guess what? Among Republicans, because everybody's talking about what the Republicans in office are trying to do to their health care. So 3 out of 4 Republicans actually really like Medicaid. And way more people in America want Medicaid funding increased than decreased. Can you believe that?
It's incredible.
Yeah,
It's so hard. It's so hard to believe.
And I know these quick shots are supposed to be only like 1 minute long, but I gotta just take a side here and talk about a representative here in Kentucky. His name is Brett Guthrie. I don't know if you knew him while
I know Brett well.
Okay. So he tried to sell this past week the proposal for cutting 800 billion with a B dollars from the Medicaid program at the federal level. He tried to sell this proposal in a Fox News op-ed, okay, this month. And he said the same types of things that frankly Joni Ernst said in her town hall that everybody knows about. And he's basically saying, hey, we're simply cutting off healthcare to those who are undeserving, like illegals. And we're just sending this Medicaid back to the states. So don't worry. Everybody that needs Medicaid is still going to have it. All of you all in Glasgow, Kentucky, which is in his district, in Horse Cave, in Russell Springs, Kentucky, Owensboro, Kentucky, all these rural hospitals that are in those places. Guess what? Your representative doesn't want to talk about. He doesn't want to talk about the huge financial hit that you will take in Carrollton, Kentucky, at your hospital there. Okay. He doesn't want to talk about kicking off seniors from nursing homes and cutting coverage for kids and disabled. In his op-ed, he didn't talk about any of that. He just said, well, it's going to go to the states. And we're just cutting it from illegals. I'm just telling you, he is completely glossing over what $800 billion of cuts at the federal level will do to Medicaid. Just saying.
So for all of the people in Brent Guthrie's district, and I'm sorry, Brent, I'm going to help them against you right now. If you're ever in a town hall, I want you to ask this question. How does the state taxes on Medicaid affect Medicaid expansion and federally funded health centers in my district? And if you ask that question, he's not going to know how to answer it because he has to lie or has to tell you that you're losing Medicaid benefits on everyone who's actually applied. That's how it works. And if you limit how the state can spend Medicaid funds, and by the way, Amy, I hate sounding like such a smart congressman right now. What happens is those monies actually go away. And what happens when monies go away in healthcare? You don't get healthcare.
Yeah.
Cheers.
It's crazy.
That's all.
Cheers.
I love long shots because I drink twice during a long shot.
Well, they're a little bit long today, but we're going to move on.
Yeah, we're going to move on.
All right.
Okay.
So
all right,
the nonpartisan Fulbright board completely resigned 11 of the 12 members of that board. Okay. This is the Trump-inspired brain drain happening again. The board cited interference by the Trump administration as the reason. And the 11 of the 12 members of the board that oversee this Fulbright program have completely resigned. Also, the director of the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery has stepped down after Trump attacked her on social media for being a supporter of DEI. So, again, this is just stupid. The Fulbright scholarships are supposed to be nonpartisan. The board is saying the Trump administration is making it partisan, and they're resigning.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them.
I know.
That's a good quick shot. Are we supposed to drink on every quick shot and the cheers, Amy? Because that's a lot.
I'm running out.
But you know what? So good for them.
All right.
All right.
And then
Amy.
tell us about Trump's 2 flagpoles gift.
All right. I know Christmas is still 6 months away. So but we do have a new Christmas gift from Donald Trump. He calls them gifts anyway, but they're flagpoles. And just, Trump wanted to This is so ridiculous. While overseeing their installation on the White House grounds, Trump said, and he actually said this, these are the best polls anywhere in the country or in the world.
I don't know what to say.
I don't either. But at least we have some beautiful polls. And because we cannot in good conscience end this episode with Donald Trump boasting about his polls, let's take a moment to spotlight and celebrate some people that got into good trouble recently. Let's do that. So would you like to start?
Yeah, I'll start. I'm going to do a cheers to Senator Padilla. This is a U.S. senator. He asked a question of the Secretary of Homeland Security, and he got arrested for that. But he was standing up for the people of California and for the people of the country. And I think cheers to you, Senator Padilla.
And I think he just made himself into a presidential contender. Cheers.
Maybe so. We should look into that.
We should. Here's to Pat Ryan and Jackie Rosen hitting Hegseth. And by the way, can we see that video again of Pat Ryan hitting Hegseth?
I have 12 seconds. Mr. Secretary, I don't say this lightly. I have to say this on the record. I think your tenure as Secretary of Defense has been shameful and weak, and you should resign. I yield back.
Gentlemen.
Amen.
Cheers. Yeah, cheers to Pat Ryan. That is a
cheers to Pat Ryan.
Cheers to Pat Ryan. Oh, and to Jackie Rosen. I mean, they both hit.
And to Jackie Rosen. And another clip we might be able to throw in there a little bit later is Alyssa Slotkin. She also had some, this was the Senate hearing just in the last 24 hours. She was very strong on Pete Hegseth, and I cheers to her for standing up. So we already talked about Senator Tina Smith confronting Mike Lee. We already did cheers for her. That was really important. But also, I'd like to do a final cheer to everyone who went out to their local protest, the No Kings protest last weekend. We expected millions of Americans to go out, and guess what, Denver? There were more than 5 million. I believe it was the largest protest in American history.
It was.
That's awesome. Cheers to my fellow Americans.
Cheers
you
to
are
the fellow
patriots.
Americans. The American way. The American way. You know, thank you for joining us. Listen, next week we have our live show, which I'm so excited about. Can't wait to do that. But for people to actually have fun with us, Amy, you know what they got to do? They got to subscribe to YouTube. Yep. You can even rate us. And it's always like 5 stars. Like it's always a thumbs up rating because we're so cool. Also, you got to follow us on socials and make sure you listen to our podcast. So tens of thousands, millions of people listen to our podcast. We have the best podcasts, the most beautiful podcasts in the world. So I'm pretty excited about that. And just what a hell of a show.
It was a great show, and I can't wait to see you again next week for our live show, Denver. Also, check out Devil's Cut. These are the shows that we do with the guests who are experts or people that are just great Americans that we want to highlight and talk about what's going on. So this is a great show. I'm really excited to be with you, and have a great day.
Have a great day.
All right, cheers.
Delicious.